At 73 years old, Seon Park stood in her Seoul penthouse, staring at her reflection with a determination that had built empires. The woman who controlled half of South Korea's tech industry, whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations, was about to do something utterly insane. She was going under the knife, not once, but multiple times, all for a 52-year-old single father from Detroit she'd met on a cooking forum. Yes, you heard that right, a cooking forum. Before we dive into this absolutely wild journey, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this story with anyone who's ever done something crazy for love. Trust me, you won't believe where this goes. Now, let's get into it. The story begins. Seon Park hadn't become a trillionaire by being impulsive. Every decision in her 73 years had been calculated, measured, strategically executed with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. She'd survived the economic crashes, outmaneuvered competitors 3 times her size, and turned a small electronics shop into a global conglomerate that made semiconductors, smartphones, and satellites. Forbes called her the Iron Orchid of Seoul. Business Insider dubbed her Asia's most ruthless businesswoman. But none of those publications knew about Michael. It started 6 months ago on a website called globalkitchenconnect.com, of all places. Seon had joined on a whim during a particularly boring board meeting, curious about American soul food after watching a documentary. She posted a question about the proper technique for making collard greens, and Michael Thompson, a middle school history teacher from Detroit, had responded with a 3-paragraph explanation that was equal parts informative and hilarious. First off, you cannot rush collard greens, he'd written. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, if you're not using smoked turkey, we can't be friends. Rule number 3, there is no rule 3, but my grandma always said things sound more official in 3s. Seoyeon had laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months. She replied. He responded. They started private messaging, then video calls. Within 3 months, she was waking up at 3 a.m. Seoul time just to catch him before his morning classes. Within 4 months, she realized she was in love. The problem? Michael had seen exactly 1 photo of her, a carefully angled shot from 20 years ago that she'd uploaded as her profile picture. He thought she was a beautiful woman in her early 50s who owned a small electronics shop in Seoul. He had no idea she was older than his mother, richer than God, and about to make the most impulsive decision of her entire life. Park. The surgeons are here for the consultation, her assistant Brenda announced, poking her head into the master bedroom. Brenda Kim had worked for Seoyeon for 37 years. She'd seen hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, and a hostile divorce from Seoyeon's late husband. But she had never, in all those decades, seen her boss do anything like this. Send them in, Seoyeon said, smoothing down her Chanel suit. 3 people entered. Dr. Randy Park, no relation, South Korea's most celebrated plastic surgeon. Dr. Chris Han, a body contouring specialist who trained in Miami. And John Lee, an anesthesiologist whose credentials read like a medical school fantasy. They were the best. Seoyeon had paid each of them enough to ensure their absolute discretion and their complete availability for the next 6 months. Mrs. Park, Dr. Randy began, setting his tablet on the coffee table. I have to say, I've reviewed your requests multiple times, and I need to express some concerns. I didn't hire you to express concerns, Seoyeon interrupted smoothly. I hired you to make me look 52 years old. Can you do it, or not? Dr. Randy exchanged glances with Dr. Chris, who cleared his throat. Mrs. Park, with all due respect, what you're asking for is extremely extensive. A Brazilian butt lift at your age carries significant risks. Combined with the facelift, neck lift, eyelid surgery, brow lift, and the breast augmentation you've requested. I'm aware of the risks. I've read every paper, every study, every case report. I've had my personal physician, Dr. Williams at Johns Hopkins, review everything. I'm in excellent health. My bone density is that of a woman 20 years younger. My cardiovascular system is perfect. I don't smoke, I barely drink, and I've been doing Pilates for 30 years. So-yeon's eyes were steel. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm asking for your expertise. Now can you do it, or do I need to find someone who can? John, the anesthesiologist, leaned forward. Mrs. Park, I think what my colleagues are trying to say is that we can do it, but we need to stage the surgeries properly. We cannot do everything at once. The stress on your body would be too much, regardless of how healthy you are. This was more reasonable. Se-yeon nodded. How would you stage it? Dr. Randy pulled up a detailed surgical plan on his tablet. First stage, facial procedures, full facelift, neck lift, upper and lower blepharoplasty, brow lift, and fat grafting to restore volume. Recovery time, 3 weeks minimum before you'll look presentable. 6 weeks for all swelling to fully subside. Second stage, Dr. Chris continued, would be the body contouring. The BBL is the most concerning procedure here. We'd harvest fat from your abdomen, flanks, and thighs, then transfer it to your buttocks. We'd also do the breast augmentation at this time. You requested a modest C-cup, correct? Correct. I don't want to look ridiculous. I want to look attractive, vibrant, like a woman who takes care of herself. Se-yeon's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Brenda, standing by the door, felt her heart break a little. In all her years working for Se-yeon, she'd never heard such vulnerability. Third stage, Dr. Randy added, would be any revision work needed, plus the other minor procedures you mentioned. Laser treatments, skin tightening, hand rejuvenation. Timeline? Se-yeon asked. 5 months total. 3 months for the major procedures and recovery, then 2 months for revisions and final treatments. Se-yeon was quiet for a moment, then she stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Her empire was out there. 47 buildings bearing her company's logo, hundreds of thousands of employees, billions in annual revenue. She'd built all of it, without ever compromising, without ever showing weakness. And now, she was about to undergo multiple dangerous surgeries because a 52-year-old history teacher from Detroit made her laugh. 5 months, she repeated. Michael is flying to Seoul in 6 months for the International Educators Conference. That gives us 1 month of buffer time. Mrs. Park, Brenda interjected gently. Have you considered just telling him the truth? Se-yeon turned, and for just a moment the Iron Orchid of Seoul looked like what she actually was. A 73-year-old woman, terrified of rejection. No, she said simply. Schedule the first surgery for next week. The night before her first surgery, Se-yeon video-called Michael. He appeared on her screen, his warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. His graying beard was neatly trimmed, and he was wearing a Detroit Lions sweatshirt that had seen better days. There's my favorite Korean foodie, he said warmly. How's your day been? Busy, Se-yeon lied, her heart hammering. Lots of meetings. How about you? Oh, you know, the usual chaos. Taught 8th graders about the Constitutional Convention, which is about as fun as it sounds. Then I had to pick up my boys from soccer practice. Randy, my youngest, scored 3 goals today. Kid's gonna be a star. Michael had 2 sons, Randy 13 and Chris 16. He'd been raising them alone since their mother died of breast cancer 4 years ago. He spoke about them constantly, with such obvious pride and love that it made Se-yeon's chest ache. That's wonderful, she said, managing a smile. You must be very proud. Hey, speaking of the boys, I told them about you. About us, I mean. Michael's cheeks darkened slightly. Hope that's okay? Us. The word made Se-yeon's stomach flip. Of course, she said. What did you tell them? That I met an amazing woman who's smart, funny, and makes me happier than I've been in years. Chris asked if you were pretty. I showed him your profile picture. He said, and I quote, Dad, she's way out of your league. They both laughed, but Se-yeon's felt hollow. That profile picture was from 1999. I can't wait to meet them, she said, and she meant it. In her entire life, Seo-yeon had never wanted children. Her business had been her baby. But the idea of being part of Michael's family, of being someone's partner, someone's stepmother, even at 73, it awakened something in her she didn't know existed. 6 months, Michael said softly. I've already started counting down the days. I'm gonna show you the best of Detroit, such as it is, and then we'll fly to Seoul together so I can see your world. I want to meet your friends, see your shop, try all your favorite restaurants. Guilt twisted in So-yeon's stomach like a knife. Michael, I need to tell you something. Hold that thought, babe. Randy's calling me. Probably forgot his homework or something. Can I call you back in 10? Of course. The screen went dark, and So-yeon sat in her empty penthouse, surrounded by priceless art and furniture, overlooking a city where she was revered and feared in equal measure. She'd never felt more alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Randy. Surgery confirmed for tomorrow, 6 a.m. Please follow all pre-op instructions. See you soon. So-yeon looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. Her face showed every one of her 73 years. Her jowls had begun to sag, despite her disciplined skincare routine. Her eyelids hooded her eyes, making her look perpetually tired. Age spots dotted her hands and chest. She looked like someone's grandmother, because that's what she was. She had 3 grandchildren from her daughter's marriage, though they barely spoke anymore. What am I doing? She whispered to her reflection. But she knew the answer. She was doing what she'd always done, whatever it took to get what she wanted. And she wanted Michael Thompson more than she'd wanted anything in decades. Tomorrow, the transformation would begin. The surgical suite at Seoul's most exclusive private hospital was a temple of sterile white and gleaming steel. At 5:47 a.m., So-yeon lay on the operating table, her hair tucked into a surgical cap, an IV already threading into her arm. She'd dismissed Brenda hours ago, insisting she didn't need anyone hovering. The truth was, she didn't want anyone to see her afraid. Good morning, Mrs. Park, John said, checking her vitals. How are you feeling? Ready, So-yeon said, though her heart was racing at 102 beats per minute, according to the monitor. Dr. Randy appeared at her side, already in his surgical gown. We're going to give you something to relax you now, and then we'll begin. When you wake up, the first phase will be complete. Any last questions? Just one, So-yeon said. Make me beautiful. Dr. Randy's eyes crinkled above his mask, the only sign of his smile. Mrs. Park, my job is just to help you look like the best version of yourself. The beauty was always there. It was a kind lie, and Seo-yeon appreciated it. She felt the sedative sliding through her veins, warm and heavy. The last thing she remembered was thinking about Michael's smile before the world went black. She woke up in agony. Mrs. Park, try not to move. You're in recovery. The surgery went perfectly. A nurse's voice, calm and professional, penetrated the fog of pain and medication. Seo-yeon tried to speak, but her face felt like it was wrapped in concrete. Everything was swollen, tight, throbbing. She made a sound, something between a moan and a whimper, that she would have been mortified by if she'd been fully conscious. I'm increasing your pain medication, the nurse said, and blessed numbness followed. The next 3 days were a blur of ice packs, drainage tubes, and shocking glimpses of herself in the mirror. She looked like she'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. Her face was swollen beyond recognition, purple and yellow bruises blooming across her cheeks and neck. Her eyes were nearly swollen shut. Brenda visited on day 4, and Seo-yeon could see her assistant fighting to keep her expression neutral. It's worse than I expected, Seo-yeon croaked. Her voice sounded strange, probably from the intubation during surgery. Dr. Randy says you're healing beautifully, Brenda said, sitting in the chair beside the hospital bed. The swelling is completely normal. Brenda, I look like a monster. You look like someone who just had major facial surgery. There's a difference. Brenda pulled out her tablet. I've been handling everything at the office. The board meeting was rescheduled. I told them you're on a wellness retreat. Randy, your Randy, not Michael's Randy, has been calling every day to check on you. Randy was Seo-yeon's younger brother, the only family member she still spoke to regularly. He ran the European division of her company, and was currently based in London. What did you tell him? That you're doing yoga in Bali, and specifically requested no work calls. Brenda hesitated. He doesn't believe me, but he's respecting your privacy. And Michael has sent you 17 text messages, 4 voice notes, and 1 very sweet video of his son saying hello. Brenda's expression softened. He really cares about you. Guilt crashed over Seo-yeon in waves. I haven't been able to respond. I can barely see my phone screen through the swelling. I can help you write messages if you'd like. No. I'll figure something out. That night, when the nurses finished their rounds and the hospital settled into quiet darkness, Seo-yeon carefully typed out a message to Michael with swollen fingers. Sorry for being quiet. Food poisoning. Absolutely miserable. Will call when I'm better. Miss you. It was a coward's lie, and she knew it. But what else could she say? Sorry, darling. I'm recovering from having my entire face reconstructed because I'm actually 21 years older than you think. His response came immediately. Oh no. Poor baby. Take care of yourself. Drink lots of water. I'm here if you need anything. Love you. Love you. He'd never said that before. Neither had she. And now here it was, dropped casually into a text message, while she lay in a hospital bed, her face held together by dissolving sutures and surgical glue, her entire deception growing more elaborate by the day. Seo-yeon closed her eyes and let herself cry, which hurt terribly and probably wasn't good for the swelling, but she couldn't help it. Week 3 post-surgery, and Seo-yeon was finally beginning to see results. The swelling had subsided enough that she could actually recognize her own features. The bruising had faded to a yellowish tinge that makeup could cover. When she looked in the mirror, she saw, not herself exactly, but someone who could be herself. A younger sister, a cousin. Dr. Randy was pleased. The results are exceptional. Better than I'd hoped. Look at the definition in your jawline now. And your neck? You could be 40. 52, Seo-yeon corrected. I need to look 52. You looked 52 on a very good day with excellent lighting and expensive skincare, Dr. Randy said with a smile. Mrs. Park, you have to understand. You're an ideal patient. You followed every instruction perfectly. Your skin quality is remarkable for your age. Your bone structure is excellent. You're giving us a lot to work with. When can we schedule the second surgery? Dr. Randy's smile faded. Mrs. Park, you need more recovery time. Your body has been through significant trauma. I'd recommend waiting at least 2 more weeks before we even consult about the BBL. 1 week. Mrs. Park. 1 week, Dr. Randy, or I find someone else. Seo-yeon's voice had regained its usual commanding tone. I don't have time to waste. Dr. Randy sighed, a sound Seo-yeon had heard from countless executives and competitors over the years. The sound of someone realizing they weren't going to win this argument. 1 week, he agreed. But if your blood work isn't perfect, we delay. No exceptions. Seo-yeon returned to her penthouse that afternoon. Brenda had arranged everything: a full-time private nurse, a refrigerator stocked with anti-inflammatory foods, and a carefully curated schedule that kept work obligations to video calls where Seo-yeon could control the lighting and camera angles. She video called Michael that night for the first time in 3 weeks. She'd spent an hour on her makeup, applying foundation and concealer with a precision that would have impressed a professional artist. The lighting in her bedroom was soft and forgiving. When Michael's face appeared on screen, his expression melted into pure relief. There you are. God, I've missed seeing your face. Are you feeling better? Much better, Seo-yeon said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. She felt different, lighter somehow, despite the titanium plates now reinforcing her facial structure. I'm sorry I was out of touch for so long. It was a rough few weeks. Food poisoning is no joke. My buddy John got it from some bad seafood last year and ended up in the hospital for 4 days. Michael leaned closer to his camera, his brow furrowing slightly. You look different somehow. Did you change your hair? Seo-yeon's heart stopped. Just styled it differently. And I lost some weight while I was sick. You always do. His smile returned, warm and genuine. Hey, I have news. The school approved my sabbatical for next semester, which means, after the conference in Seoul, I can stay for an extra 2 months, if you'll have me, that is. 2 months. 2 months of maintaining this lie in person. 2 months of pretending to be someone she wasn't. That's wonderful, So-yeon heard herself say. I'd love that. The boys are excited too. Chris is already researching Korean history for a school project, and Randy's been trying to learn Korean on some app, though I think he's mostly learning how to order food. Michael laughed, that rich, warm sound that made So-yeon's chest ache. They want to know if you have any kids. I realize we've never really talked about that. So-yeon froze. This was it, a perfect opening to start telling the truth, to mention her daughter, her grandchildren, her real age. I was always too focused on work. The words hung in the air between them, another brick in the wall of deception she was building. They talked for another hour, about his students, about a new restaurant she should try in Seoul. She owned the building it was in, but didn't mention that. About their plans for when he arrived. Every word was another lie of omission. Every smile felt more fraudulent than the last. When they finally said goodnight, Seo-yeon sat in the darkness of her bedroom and wondered how far she was willing to go. She'd already changed her face. In 1 week, she'd change her body. But at what point would she have changed so much that she'd lost herself entirely? Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter, Ji-woo, the first in 6 months. Mom, Randy says you're in Bali? That's not like you. Are you okay? Seo-yeon stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, I'm fine. Needed a break. Talk soon. She was becoming very good at those. The consultation for the BBL took place in Dr. Chris's office, a sleek space decorated with before and after photos that would have made excellent marketing materials if his clients weren't all wealthy people who'd paid extra for privacy. Mrs. Park, I need to be very direct with you, Dr. Chris said, pulling up 3D imaging on his computer. A Brazilian butt lift is one of the most dangerous cosmetic procedures available. The mortality rate is approximately 1 in 3,000. For someone your age, the risks increase significantly. I'm aware. Are you? Dr. Chris turned the monitor toward her, showing a detailed diagram. We'll be injecting fat into your gluteal muscles. If even one fat globule gets into a blood vessel and travels to your lungs, it can cause a pulmonary embolism. You could die on the table, or you could die 3 days later in your sleep. Even with the best surgeon, even with every precaution, there's risk. Seo-yeon looked at the diagram, at the clinical representation of what vanity could cost her. She thought about her empire. Who would run it if she died? Randy, probably. He was competent enough. She thought about her daughter, her grandchildren. They'd probably be relieved to inherit early. Then she thought about Michael seeing her naked for the first time, expecting a 52-year-old body, and finding a 73-year-old one instead. I understand the risks, she said. When can we schedule it? Dr. Chris and John exchanged the kind of look doctors share when they know they're enabling something dangerous, but can't legally stop it. Your blood work came back perfect, John admitted reluctantly. Better than perfect, actually. Your markers are incredible. Next week, then, Seo-yeon said. Let's do both procedures, the BBL and the breast augmentation. Get it all done at once. Mrs. Park, That's a minimum of 6 hours under anesthesia, John protested. The longer you're under, the more risk. I don't have time for multiple recoveries. I need this done in one surgery. Dr. Randy, who'd been quiet until now, finally spoke. Mrs. Park, forgive me for asking, but is he really worth dying for? The question hung in the air like smoke. Seo-yeon thought about it seriously. Was Michael worth dying for? She'd known him for 6 months. They'd never even met in person. She was risking her life, her fortune, her legacy. For what? A chance at love? At companionship? At feeling young and desired again? Yes, she said simply, he is. Because the truth was, somewhere in the past 6 months, Michael had become more than just a man she was attracted to. He'd become hope. A future that looked different from the one she'd mapped out decades ago. Endless board meetings, strategic acquisitions, dying alone in this penthouse, surrounded by art she'd bought as investments, rather than because she loved it. Michael represented a life where someone would notice if she came home late, where someone would care if she'd eaten dinner, where someone would hold her hand while watching television and tell her about his day and make her laugh without an agenda or an ulterior motive. She was 73 years old, and Michael Thompson was the first person in decades who'd wanted to know her. Not her money, not her connections, not what she could do for them. Just her. Even if the her he knew was partly a fiction. The second surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, which Seo-yeon chose specifically because it was Wednesday evening in Detroit. Michael would be at his weekly poker game with friends and wouldn't expect a call. Brenda drove her to the hospital at 4 a.m., neither of them speaking. The silence felt heavy, loaded with all the things Brenda wanted to say, but wouldn't. Finally, as they pulled into the private entrance, Brenda broke. It's not too late to back out. Yes, it is, Seo-yeon said quietly. Mrs. Park, Seo-yeon, I've worked for you for 37 years. I've never questioned your decisions. But this, Brenda's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This could kill you. And for what? A man you've never even met in person. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Brenda turned to face her, and Seo-yeon was startled to see tears in her assistant's eyes. You've built an empire. You've changed industries. You employ hundreds of thousands of people. You're a legend. And you're going to risk all of that, risk your life for some man who doesn't even know who you really are? Seo-yeon was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Do you know what it's like, Brenda, to be 73 years old and realize that not a single person in the world would be sad if you died? My daughter calls once a year on my birthday out of obligation. My grandchildren don't know me. My brother is kind but distant. The only people who would miss me are the ones on my payroll. That's not true. It is true. And it's my own fault. I chose this life. I chose the empire over everything else. But Michael, Seo-yeon's voice softened. Michael asks me how I slept. He sends me pictures of his breakfast. He tells me about his students and his sons and his dreams. He wants to know what makes me laugh. He cares if I'm happy. But he doesn't know you. But for 6 months, I've gotten to be someone different. Someone lighter. Someone who doesn't carry the weight of $1 trillion company on her shoulders. Seo-yeon opened the car door. If I die on that table today, Brenda, at least I'll die knowing that for a brief moment I was loved for myself and not my portfolio. She walked into the hospital before Brenda could respond. The surgery began at 6:15 a.m. Dr. Chris had assembled a team of 8. 2 assisting surgeons, 3 surgical nurses, John on anesthesia, and 2 emergency specialists on standby. They were taking every precaution. All right, Mrs. Park, John said as she lay on the operating table. We're going to start with the harvesting phase. Dr. Chris will use liposuction to remove fat from your abdomen, flanks, and thighs. Then we'll process that fat and inject it into your gluteal muscles. After that, Dr. Randy will perform the breast augmentation. Total surgical time, approximately 7 hours. You'll be asleep the entire time. Any questions? Just one, Se-yeon said, her voice already slurred from the pre-medication. If something goes wrong, if I don't wake up, there's a letter in my safe. Brenda knows the combination. Make sure Michael gets it. Nothing's going to go wrong, Dr. Chris said, with more confidence than he probably felt. But if it does, Se-yeon's eyes were heavy. Promise me. We promise, John said gently. Now count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8. The world dissolved into chemical darkness. At 1:47 p.m., everything went wrong. Dr. Chris had just finished injecting the final aliquot of processed fat into Se-yeon's left gluteal muscle when her blood pressure suddenly spiked, then dropped, then spiked again. Her O2 sat is dropping, one of the nurses called out. 92, 89, 86. PI. Pupils are dilating, another nurse added. John's hands flew across his equipment, his earlier calm evaporating into focused intensity. BP is 170 over 110. Heart rate 135. She's in distress. Dr. Chris pulled back immediately, his mind racing through possibilities. Fat embolism, pulmonary embolism, cardiac event. Any of them could kill her in minutes. Start her on pressors, John ordered. Get me epi and atropine ready. Someone page cardiology now. PI. The surgical suite exploded into controlled chaos. Alarms beeped. People moved with urgent precision. Dr. Randy stood back, his part of the surgery not yet begun, watching in horror as Se-yeon's vitals continued to deteriorate. She's going into V-fib, John announced, his voice tight. Charging to 200. Everyone clear. The defibrillator's whine filled the room. Se-yeon's body jerked on the table. Still in V-fib, charging to 300. Another shock. Another terrible moment of waiting. We've got sinus rhythm, John said, relief flooding his voice, but barely. BP is still unstable, 140 over 95 and climbing. Dr. Chris made the decision instantly. We're closing. Forget the breast augmentation. Get Dr. Lee from cardiology down here now. I need to know if there's a fat embolus in her pulmonary system. The next 3 hours were a blur of emergency protocols, scans, and increasingly grim-faced specialists. By the time Se-yeon was stabilized enough to move to the ICU, the sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like a warning. Brenda was in the ICU waiting room when Dr. Randy finally emerged, still in his surgical scrubs. She stood immediately, reading his expression. She's alive, he said first, because that was what mattered. We believe she suffered a fat embolism. Some of the injected fat entered her bloodstream and caused the pulmonary event. Her heart stopped for 42 seconds. We got it started again, but she's on a ventilator now. The next 24 hours are crucial. Brenda felt her legs weaken. She sat down heavily. Can I see her? Not yet. She's sedated and intubated. We're monitoring her closely. Dr. Randy sat beside her, suddenly looking exhausted. Miss Kim, I need you to understand something. Even if she survives this, and that's still an if, she's going to need extensive recovery time. Months possibly. And there could be complications we haven't discovered yet. Brain damage from oxygen deprivation, lung damage, cardiac issues. Did you? Brenda swallowed hard. Did you complete the procedure? We completed the liposuction and most of the fat transfer, but we had to stop before the breast augmentation. Right now, surviving is more important than aesthetics. Brenda laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. She's going to be so angry about that. If she wakes up angry, I'll consider it a blessing. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Brenda said, There's a man, in America. He needs to be contacted if things don't go well. The man she's doing this for? Yes. Dr. Randy's expression hardened. Then he should know what his vanity cost her. It wasn't his vanity, Brenda said quietly. It was hers. He doesn't even know she's doing this. At 11:37 p.m. Seoul time, 9:37 a.m. Detroit time, Michael's phone rang. He was in the middle of teaching a class on the Marshall Plan when he saw the international number. He usually didn't answer during school hours, but something made him step into the hallway. "Hello? Mr. Thompson? This is Brenda Kim. I'm Seon's." The formality in the woman's voice made Michael's stomach drop. "Is she okay? What happened?" "Mr. Thompson, Seo-yeon is in the hospital. She's had a medical emergency and—" "What kind of emergency? Is she okay? Which hospital? I can get on a plane right now." "Mr. Thompson, please listen. She's stable for now, but she's in intensive care. The doctors say the next 24 hours will determine—" Brenda's voice cracked slightly. "Will determine if she makes it." The hallway seemed to tilt around Michael. "Makes it? What are you? She had food poisoning. How does someone go from food poisoning to—" "She wasn't entirely truthful with you about her condition," Brenda said carefully. "Mr. Thompson, I think you should come to Seoul. I'll arrange everything. Flights, accommodation, everything. Just come." "I'm getting the next flight out," Michael said, his mind already racing. The boys. He'd need to call his mother to watch them. School. He'd need to arrange a substitute. None of it mattered. Seo-yeon was dying, and he wasn't there. "I'll send you the details within the hour," Brenda said. "Mr. Thompson, she cares about you very much. More than you know." After they hung up, Michael stood in the empty hallway of Monroe Middle School, his phone clutched in his hand, trying to process what he'd just heard. The woman he'd been falling in love with for 6 months was in a hospital bed in Seoul, possibly dying, and he didn't even know what was really wrong. He called his mom, then the principal, then he went home to pack, moving through the motions mechanically, while his mind spun in panicked circles. His younger son Randy found him throwing clothes into a suitcase. "Dad, what's wrong?" Michael looked at his 13-year-old and felt his composure crack. "It's Seo-yeon. She's really sick. I need to go to Korea." "Is she going to be okay?" "I really don't know." Randy, with the straightforward wisdom of adolescence, said, "Then you better go tell her you love her, just in case." Michael pulled his son into a hug, grateful and heartbroken at once. 15 hours later, Michael Thompson walked into Seoul's Incheon International Airport, jet-lagged, terrified, and completely unprepared for what he was about to discover. A woman in an expensive suit was waiting at arrivals, with a sign that read Thompson. "Mr. Thompson? I'm Brenda Kim. The car is waiting." Michael followed her in a daze, through the airport, into a black Mercedes that was probably worth more than his annual salary, through streets filled with Korean signage he couldn't read, while Brenda made quiet phone calls in Korean beside him. "How is she?" he finally managed to ask. "She made it through the night," Brenda said. "That's good. She's still sedated, but her vitals have stabilized somewhat." The doctors are cautiously optimistic. "What happened? Really?" Brenda was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Thompson, there are things about Seo-yeon that she hasn't told you. Important things. I think it's best if you see for yourself." They pulled up to a building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Private security, marble floors, art on the walls. Michael followed Brenda through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and money until they reached the ICU. "She's in room 7, Brenda said. "Mr. Thompson, before you go in, I need to prepare you. She looks different than in her photos. The medical procedures were extensive. Try not to be shocked." "I don't care what she looks like," Michael said fiercely. "I just need to see her." Brenda nodded and pushed open the door to room 7. Michael stepped inside and stopped dead. The woman in the hospital bed was surrounded by machines, ventilator, monitors, IV stands. Her face was swollen and bruised, but even through the medical trauma, he could see she'd had recent surgery. Bandages covered her chest. Compression garments wrapped her lower body. But it was her hand he noticed most, the one lying outside the blanket. It was elegant, manicured, and spotted with age in a way that no 52-year-old's hand should be. "How old is she?" Michael heard himself ask. Brenda stepped beside him. 73. The room tilted. "What?" "She's 73 years old. The photo she showed you was from 1999. Everything she told you about her electronics shop. She actually owns Park Technologies. It's the fourth largest tech conglomerate in Asia. She's worth approximately $2 trillion. And she," Brenda's voice softened, "she had extensive cosmetic surgery to look younger for you. That's why she's here. The surgery went wrong." Michael couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He looked at the woman in the bed, really looked at her now, and saw the truth in every line of her face, every age spot on her hands, every subtle detail that the surgeons hadn't been able to change. "She lied to me," he said numbly. "She did," Brenda agreed. "But Mr. Thompson, she also almost died for you. That should count for something." Michael stood in that hospital room for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, staring at the woman he thought he knew. His mind kept trying to reconcile the vibrant, funny, sweet person he'd fallen for, with this elderly woman in a hospital bed who'd lied about everything. "I need air," he finally said, turning toward the door. "Mr. Thompson, I just need a minute." He walked blindly through the pristine corridors until he found himself in a small garden courtyard, surrounded by carefully manicured trees and the muted sounds of soul traffic beyond the hospital walls. He sat on a bench and put his head in his hands. 73. She was 73 years old, older than his mother, old enough to be his grandmother. He'd been sharing his modest teacher life with someone who could probably buy his entire neighborhood without noticing the expense. Every conversation they'd had suddenly took on a different tint. Every time he'd complained about money, about his son's soccer fees, about needing a new car, about the cost of textbooks, she'd listen sympathetically while sitting in what was probably a penthouse worth millions. His phone buzzed, a text from his older son Chris. "Dad, did you make it? Is she okay?" Michael stared at the message. What was he supposed to say? "Your dad's girlfriend is actually a 73-year-old billionaire who almost died getting plastic surgery, and also, she's been lying to me for 6 months." He typed back. "Made it. She's stable. Love you." "Mr. Thompson?" Michael looked up to find a tired-looking man in surgical scrubs. Dr. Randy, according to his ID badge. "I'm one of Mrs. Park's surgeons. I understand Ms. Kim told you about the situation. Some of it." Michael's voice came out harder than he intended. "Did she ask you to lie to me too, or were you just following orders?" Dr. Randy sat down on the bench, uninvited. "Mr. Thompson, I need you to understand something. I advised Mrs. Park against these surgeries multiple times. I explained the risks. I told her she was beautiful as she was, but she was determined. She wanted this for herself, yes, but primarily she wanted it because she believed you would reject her if you knew her real age." "I would have," Michael said automatically, then stopped. Would he have? If a 73-year-old woman had contacted him on that cooking forum, would he have given her a chance? Probably not. The realization made him feel sick. "Mr. Thompson, she's not awake yet, but when she is, she's going to need support. The recovery from what happened, both the physical trauma and the emotional fallout, is going to be extensive. I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But that woman in there risked her life because she fell in love with you." "She fell in love with the idea of me," Michael corrected. "Some younger man who could make her feel young again. It wasn't real." "Are you sure about that?" Dr. Randy stood. "Because from where I'm standing, someone who risks death just to make another person happy is feeling something very real indeed. Whether you choose to accept it is up to you." He left Michael alone in the courtyard. 3 days passed. Michael stayed in Seoul, sleeping in a luxury hotel that Brenda had arranged. Another reminder of the vast gulf between his world and So-yeon's. He visited the hospital twice a day, sitting in her room while she remained sedated, the ventilator breathing for her with mechanical precision. On the fourth day, Dr. Randy sat down. Randy decided to try removing the ventilator. Her vitals are strong enough, he explained to Michael, who'd become a fixture in room 7. We're going to reduce the sedation and see if she can breathe on her own. If she can, she might wake up within a few hours. Michael watched as they pulled the tube from her throat, as machines recalibrated, as nurses made notations on charts. So-yeon's breathing continued, shallow but steady. Good, Dr. Randy said. Now we wait. Michael waited. He called his boys and talked to them about their homework, their soccer games, their lives that felt both close and impossibly distant. He called his mother and told her a sanitized version of what was happening. He sat in that hospital room and tried to figure out what he felt. Betrayed, definitely. Confused, angry. But underneath all of that was something else he didn't want to examine too closely. Real, genuine concern for this woman who'd lied to him about everything, except apparently how much she cared. At 4:47 p.m., So-yeon's eyes opened. She blinked slowly, confused, her gaze unfocused. Then her eyes found Michael sitting beside her bed, and something like horror crossed her face. "You're here," she rasped, her voice raw from the intubation. "Yeah," Michael said. "I'm here." "You know?" "I know." Tears began sliding down So-yeon's face, and she tried to turn away, but moving hurt too much. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Michael didn't know what to say. Sorry didn't begin to cover it. But looking at her, really looking at her, without the filters or carefully angled photos, he saw a terrified elderly woman who'd gambled everything and lost. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why did you lie?" "Because I was lonely," So-yeon said simply, "and selfish, and terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd disappear. And I couldn't bear the thought of losing you before I ever really had you." She closed her eyes. "I know that doesn't make it right. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Michael, every word I said about caring for you, about loving you, that was real. That was the only real thing. You don't even know me, not really. I'm just some teacher from Detroit who... You're the man who sends me pictures of his terrible cooking attempts to make me laugh, who tells his sons about me with such obvious pride it makes my heart hurt, who cares about his students and worries about their futures, who still wears his wedding ring on a chain around his neck because letting go feels like betrayal." Seon's eyes opened again, meeting his. "I know you, Michael Thompson. Maybe not everything, but I know the parts that matter." Michael touched his chest unconsciously, feeling the chain under his shirt. He'd never mentioned that to her. She must have noticed it during a video call and never said anything. "I built an empire," So-yeon continued, her voice getting weaker. "I have more money than I can spend in 10 lifetimes. I have power and influence and respect. But you know what I don't have? Someone who asks me how I slept. Someone who saves funny memes to send me because he thinks they'll brighten my day. Someone who actually cares if I exist." She started crying harder. "I'm 73 years old, and I've been alone for so long, and you made me feel less alone, and I was willing to do anything, even lie, even risk death, to keep feeling that way." Michael sat there, listening to machines beep and monitors chirp, watching this powerful woman reduced to tears and tubes and honesty. "I should leave," he said finally. "Go home. Forget this ever happened." "I know," So-yeon whispered. "I don't blame you." He sat there for another long moment, thinking about loneliness, about his own late nights, scrolling through old photos of his wife, about the desperate human need for connection, about how easy it was to judge someone else's choices when you hadn't walked their path. My wife, he said slowly, died 4 years ago. Cancer. It was brutal, fast. One day we're planning Chris's bar mitzvah, the next we're in hospice. And after she died I was so angry. At God, at the universe, at her for leaving me with 2 boys to raise alone. And the loneliness. He swallowed hard. The loneliness almost killed me. I understand desperate. I understand wanting to be someone different, someone whose life isn't defined by loss. Michael, I'm not saying what you did was okay, he continued. It wasn't. You lied to me about fundamental things. But I'm also saying I understand why. Then, Michael said, 73, huh? Despite everything, Soyeon almost smiled. You thought I was 52. In my defense, very good surgeons. Not good enough, apparently. Good enough that you're alive. That's something. Michael took a breath. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to recover. No more surgeries, by the way. I've already talked to your doctors. Then, when you're better, we're going to start over. Like it's the first time. No lies, no pretending. You're going to tell me who you really are. All of it. And I'm going to decide if I can forgive this. You're staying? Soyeon's voice was barely a whisper. I flew halfway around the world. Might as well stick around for the recovery. He paused. But Soyeon, this doesn't mean we're okay. It just means I'm willing to see if we can get there. Thank you. Epilogue. 6 months later. Michael Thompson stood in the kitchen of Seo-yeon's Seoul penthouse, teaching her 73-year-old girlfriend. And yes, she was his girlfriend, even though explaining that to people was complicated. How to properly season collard greens. More smoked turkey, he instructed. Don't be shy about it. It already smells very intense, Seo-yeon said, wrinkling her nose but smiling. She looked different now than she had in the hospital. The swelling had gone down. The scars had faded. She'd kept most of the facial surgery results. Dr. Randy had done good work, but she'd also stopped trying to look like someone she wasn't. Her hair had more gray in it now. She wore comfortable clothes instead of designer suits. She looked, Michael thought, beautiful. Dad, this place is insane, Randy, Michael's Randy, yelled from somewhere in the penthouse. Both boys had flown over for summer vacation and were currently exploring the 10,000-square-foot space with unbridled teenage enthusiasm. Tell your son to stop touching the art, Seo-yeon called out. Some of those pieces are worth more than our house. I know, Michael finished, grinning. You've only told me 50 times. It hadn't been easy these 6 months. There had been hard conversations. Therapy, both individual and couples, though calling it couples therapy when one partner was 73 and the other was 52 felt surreal. There had been meetings with Seo-yeon's daughter Ji-woo, who'd been shocked to discover her mother had a boyfriend, and even more shocked that her mother had nearly died for him. There had been moments when Michael wasn't sure this could work, when the differences between their worlds felt too vast. When he'd think about his life in Detroit and her life in Seoul, and wonder how they could possibly bridge that gap. But then Seyeon would do something like master his grandmother's collard greens recipe, or spend 3 hours helping Chris with his college application essays, or donate an anonymous $1 million to Monroe Middle School's arts program. She thought Michael didn't know it was her, but he absolutely knew. And he'd remember why he stayed. Boys, dinner, Michael called out. They gathered around Seyeon's dining table, worth more than Michael's car, eating collard greens and cornbread, and arguing about soccer teams. Seyeon mostly listened, occasionally interjecting with comments that made the boys laugh. She turned out to be surprisingly good with teenagers, maybe because she'd been so bad at it with her own daughter, and was determined to do better this time. Later, after the boys had gone to bed in guest rooms larger than Michael's entire Detroit house, he and Seo-yeon sat on her balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. I talked to my board today, Seo-yeon said quietly. Told them I'm stepping down as CEO. Randy, my brother, will take over. Michael turned to her, surprised. You're serious? I'm 73 years old. I almost died. And I realized something in that hospital bed. I spent 50 years building an empire, but I forgot to build a life. She took his hand. I want to build a life now, with you, if you'll have me. Seo-yeon Park, are you asking me to? I'm asking if you'd consider making this permanent. I know it's complicated. I know I'm older than your mother. I know our worlds are different. But I love you. Really, truly love you. Not some fantasy version. The real you, who burns toast and cries at student graduations, and whose socks never match. Michael laughed, then sobered. What about my job, my life in Detroit? Keep it, or don't, or split time between both places. I have resources. She smiled slightly. $1 trillion resources, if you recall. We'll figure it out. Michael thought about it. About his sons, who'd be off to college in a few years anyway. About his job, which he loved, but which wasn't the only teaching job in the world. About this unexpected, impossible, slightly ridiculous love story it stumbled into. Okay, he said, let's try permanent. Seo-yeon's smile was radiant. Really? Really, but on one condition. Anything. No more plastic surgery. I like you exactly as you are. Scars, wrinkles, age spots, and all. Deal, So-yeon said, and kissed him under the soul stars. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be challenges. Her daughter's continued skepticism, the public revelation of their relationship, the logistics of merging two very different lives. But for the first time in decades, So-yeon Park wasn't planning 10 moves ahead. She was just being present, being honest, and being loved. And that, she discovered, was worth more than all the empires in the world. If you enjoyed this wild journey of love, deception, and second chances, don't forget to like this story, subscribe for more entertaining content, and share it with anyone who needs a reminder that it's never too late for love, even if you're a 73-year-old Korean trillionaire. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Michael's position. Would you have stayed or left?